Hi, everybody. That's great to be back again today. Now, I've got an introduction to make tonight as well before we start, because the young lady flickering in and out of the phone here is my wife, Amanda. You'll be meeting Amanda at a later date. Amanda is a very good novelist in her own right and exceptionally good poet. Co-host Speakeasy with me, and she co-hosts our podcast, Not the TV Guide. That's a story of another day. Now, it's been great today to hear some quite music-based pieces, because the first few I'm going to do today are from my last book, actually, poetry book, Changing Carriages at Birmingham New Street. And it's quite, David loves me doing poems about British musicians. So I promised him I'd do some about some Manchester ones, but that's going to happen another day because I've been too busy, unfortunately, getting prepared for a job interview and work. So, but last poetry book, Changing Carriages at Birmingham New Street, and I need to state this before we start with Amanda sat next to me. It's about an imaginary couple having an affair. It's not real. Because last time somebody actually thought it was real, somebody sat here, wrote a piece of flash fiction about having an imaginary affair with Kiefer Sutherland in Revenge, which she'll share you another day. Right, so, thank you, Amanda. Right, first two poems, okay, from Changing Cabbages. The first one is Stonehenge came up before, actually, at the beginning of it set. I think it was Teresa, was it? So this one's actually set at Stonehenge, actually, and it's called Plain Trumpton cover versions with Freddie Phillips at the Edge Stonehenge. Now, people that don't know, Trumpton was a very influential children's program on UK TV at the beginning of the 1970s. I love it. I love the music as well, because Freddie Phillips is an exceptionally talented British folk guitarist. So this is playing Trump's cover versions with Freddie Phillips at the Edge of Stonehenge. Wandering through the countryside, whose idea was it? Stop a few miles outside Stonehenge and sit there that afternoon, picnic and acoustic guitars in hand, Sarah, and recreate Freddie Phillips's work on Trumpton. It was never he lived anywhere near there. You wanted to sit near Stonehenge with my old cassette recorder and lie next to my car, determined to learn a few of his tracks in a slightly slower key. F, you told me, when I stumbled onto E, when we went through the fireman's drill, and I started to play Windy Miller's song afterwards, smiling silently to yourself, after realising I'd drunk way too much for you to get more sense out of me by then. Mr. Farthing, Mrs. Honeyman, Mr. Swallow, I tried to keep up with you, stumbling around my fretboard, imagining I was a genius, when in reality I was barely an amateur, frost furred next to our car in a blanket, looking slowly at the sunset. The past festered in our hearts, counting notes again in the dawn of the nearby fields, music from our childhood, drawing us both together again, burying our guitars into our emotions, our love into barleycorn. The other poem I want to read from this collection is another music one, actually. I really like the Tamworth musician, also from the 70s, called Nick Drake. Massive and astonishing guitarist. And I wanted to do this poem on him because it's not one I'm going to read out this, but it's set at Floodborough Beach, which is, if you know your UK geography, it's right on the other side of Morecambe. So it's not that far away from Manchester. You get there in about an hour. So this is kind of falls off from that. And this is Asleep at Footborough Beach with Nick Drake. Ricocheting all the backwards stretched from Morecambe Beach. Do you remember, Sarah? Why you went to Floodborough in error instead of going back to Manchester? In hindsight, it was funny when we went past Oxholm and you blurted out shocked. We're going completely the wrong way. And we both decided to go to Floodborough for another night before heading home. Do you remember that high-built cloud on the edge of the coastline? All that evening after tea, and floor glasses of wine like a postcard from another time. Nick Drake's 3 hours ringing in our ears, and the gulls flying off the coastline into the deep sunset in the distance, leaving us both too tired to look at each other, right up to when the policeman woke us up at the crisp of dawn, shifting us along in silence with the start of the rain, laughing over our mistake, clutched in silence all the way to the car, more than the jetting early morning fog, and our worries hung like a strand of cotton on the edge of a blade in deep love, right before everything went wrong. That book you can pick up. I'll put the link out later. Now, David said before, obviously, I've done two novels in the last couple of years, and I want to read out the first page and a bit of the second novel. And the second novel itself is called Death. Well, the first one was about birth, but the first one was it's about the birth of a creative person. And this is set in an area called Chorlton, which is a couple of miles away from where I grew up. And this is obviously death, about the death of an author. So, death. I know where and when exactly I died, almost as well as I know exactly where I was born. I know when the sun rose for the first time, when I was placed in my mother's arms, and she looked at me amazed at the love that only a mother has, like I know when was the last time I breathed out for the final time, and fell to the ground knowing I was never going to walk through the meadows again with the sun on my back, let alone see my family or any of my friends ever again. I know it was 12 minutes past 12 on the 28th of January in 2013 when I died. Like, I know exactly how much cheese I had on my sandwich I'd eaten 30 minutes before. Like I know exactly where I was born almost the very second. I was born 5 to 10 miles away in Park Hospital, now Trafford General, on the 27th of February 1970, to Robert and Helen Nichols, both of whom lived in Edge Lane on the borderline of Chorlton and Stretford. I had two more children over the next few years after me, Lizzie and another son, Bobby, who was born 9 years after me, almost to the day, and almost by chance to this very minute. If you research me, you'll see I am the author of 5 full-length novels and 2 films, with 6 close to being completed. You'll also see, if you look around, my 3rd novel taught by my indie band Siren, which I co-formed when I was 16 and which collapsed when I was 18 after my girlfriend at the time, Tara, cheated on me with our bass player. I simply ran away from Chorlton and travelled all over the UK until I came back for the first time in 15 years for Bobby's wedding, and him and his now wife invited Sarah along to my book launch. The rest I'll go on to next. Okay, now I'm always a big fan when I do like at least these sort of slightly longer sets. Start off with a couple bits and pieces that I know. Things are interesting now because I don't know these next few pieces very well at all. But yeah, I'll put the link on here later. But I've had a short story published in a romance magazine called Micromance, and this is likely going to lead into my 3rd novel. But in the minute, it's very early days, where it's going to be a series of interlinked, sometimes romance stories, sometimes not, imaginary stories set in an imaginary court, which is, if you know me, that's where I'm working at the moment. I work in the back office of a court. So I'm going to read out a bit now of the stories in Micromance magazine. So this is called Late Night Authors. Orders. Yeah, not authors. Late night authors could be fun, but yeah, this is Late Night Orders. Bobby always hated working late in principle, but she didn't mind doing it occasionally, of course, if she had been prepared. As she always preferred being at home with her animals as early as possible. When her manager came up to her desk just after lunch on Friday, she knew before he spoke to her, she knew what he was going to ask her. Bobby, Melissa's going to have to leave early tonight, and he stopped. And she looked up for a second and knew without Frank finishing the sentence, let alone the story. She'd pulled out the story about a sick father and the fact she needed to leave early for whatever number of reasons on top of it. Who's on duty tonight? She finished the sentence for him before he could carry on knowing what he was going to tell him. Judge Paxton. She didn't answer him and just looked back at her orders and carried on with work, and as soon as Frank had gone, she just looked up in the air and started cursing softly under her breath and walked slowly to the kitchen before carrying on. Why did you agree to that? It wasn't as if he was good at his job, she told herself when she got back to her desk. It was simply a case she dreaded getting the orders off him when he was roasted, sitting there, caught as nobody could read them. And if you're by yourself within White Court, it'd be bloody uncomfortable if, say, you find a restaurant several £100,000 and they wrote the cost down such a confused and wrote way, you'd have to go and ask him after his case what he'd wrote on the order for the next case. That's what he's drinking. She looked down at a cup of coffee and she really didn't want to think about that. There were rumours, there was talk she knew from people who were damn higher up the food chain she was, and she knew they wouldn't be making it up. It wasn't her place to discuss it. Not that she was particularly bothered if she was honest to herself. 5 p.m. went, and so did the rest of the team. She carried on with her orders. 5:30 came and went, and she still didn't hear anything. So she made herself another coffee. She had the coffee and finished off 2 more orders and looked at the clock. It was 6:45. She looked at her phone and thought so. He's not got to let me know the case had finished. And everything was fine. And looked at the schedule and the manager's France drive. And thought to herself, his last case was at 4:45. He should have rung by now to let him know the last person on duty knew they were done for the night. He hadn't. She walked down the security desk. It was 7 p.m. Okay. Now for a couple of new poems. I've said before about changing carriages at Birmingham New Street with my last poetry book to date. It was originally going to be my actual last book, that, to be honest with you, because I wasn't going to write anymore, but it's kind of snowballed this. And I thought David Richards' next book was going to be called Ghost. I've had to change the title of it, fortunately, yesterday. So it's a bit, I said, slightly out of date. But the next book's going to be called The Other Side of New Street, which is Birmingham New Street as a train station in UK. And I wanted to start writing the book looking at the other point of view, changing carriages, which is told through the male narrator called Andy. Great name. And the woman who's having an affair with Sarah. And I wanted to try, and I read one of them out the other week here. I wrote a few more since through the viewpoint of the lady, Sarah. So there's 2 poems here now. So first one's called The Day We Saw the Sharks. And this is set at a zoo, and I've forgotten which one it was, actually. The Day We Saw the Sharks. It wasn't the sight of the sharks themselves that we both remembered later, but rather the way it felt like the tank they were in, held wide open for everybody to laugh at, floors and all. It's so cruel. Do you remember saying to me, barely holding your anger back, getting into our car, stating you would rather die than forced to be lived like that? But I saw something else. The way your fingers began to start pulling at the strap of your bag, when you spoke to your agents to be sat there waiting for our meal, leaving me sat there feeling like a spare part after you carried on and drunk 3 whiskies, leaving me to drive us back no matter what I wanted. You never saw it, Andy, did you? About how they must have felt being penned in constantly and laughed at day after day, never thinking how it impacted me too, how it made me look. In wherever they swam, admiring them for not giving up long after we split, and making me realise afterwards how our relationship was lost at sea. Okay. In changing carriages, one of the big areas that the couple, well, I'd got quite a few poems about them, was set in Brighton. I've been to Brighton a lot over the years, and it's one of my favourite areas. It's got a very magical sort of feel to it. I've not took them under there yet, and I need to, so, but, so this is their first meeting in Brighton, many, many years after the last spoke as children. Forbidden love in Brighton. Do you remember me telling you, Andy, I nearly didn't come down and stood outside Brighton train station for 15 minutes, asking myself if I should go back where I'd come from and meet you. Stood there on the edge of the lanes, watching the sunset at the edge of the coastline near the old pier, and the wind whispering in my ear in alternative phrases. Should you think of your husband in equal breath? The Prince Albert, the Theatre Royal, each step feeling like a forbidden love. before we'd even met again, as much as a betrayal of everything. It's 10 years of an unhappy marriage I've got myself trapped in. I remember stopping outside a copper and seeing you sat there with at least 2 empty cups of coffee in front of you, your nails bitten off to breaking point. And I ran inside when it started raining, my choice made without realising. Right, okay. To wrap up with tonight then. Yeah, now, a couple of you know this, I've seen me read elsewhere. I do have a habit sometimes of writing surreal fiction. Just sometimes very, very silly ones. But this is a friend of mine who's not doing very well at the moment. So, and I wrote this over Easter for her. And it's called, this is something about, it's a private eye story, this one. But it's a private eye story of a private eye that's an Easter egg detective looking for missing Easter eggs. Now this is, I'm not going to read it. We'll see how it goes time-wise, okay? I'll read a bit of it out anyway. Dottie Huswick and the case of the missing Martian Easter egg. Dottie's door knocked twice at 8 p.m. on Easter Sunday. Who on earth could that be, Winnie? She looked at her dog. I've been manic all day today. Dottie was known throughout York as an award-winning therapist, but for a few weeks every year she closed her practice to go and help people find missing Easter eggs. In 2025 alone, she had a busy year at the run to Easter, travelling as far as the outskirts of Bradford and Leeds to help a shopkeeper rescue her collection of Easter eggs from an over-hungry bear, and a ghost who had the money, but not the actual ability to send Easter eggs to her 2 alive children. She just pulled out her own Easter egg to eat and she looked at the door. She had a busy few days. I looked at Winnie wordily when she heard a strange voice call out, Dottie! Dottie Huswick. She swung the door open to find 2 strange little figures on her porch. They were green, shiny, and undeniably not of this world, Martians, holding a holographic map shaped like a chocolate bar. You're Dottie Huswick, the taller Martian asked. Her antenna flickered nervous shades of blue before carrying on. We desperately need your help. Dottie didn't know what to answer either. Our Easter egg has gone missing. The second, a short one whose skin shimmered like a jelly bean. Our galactic heirloom. Dottie looked at Winnie, whose tail went up in shocked surprise. A cosmic Easter egg hunt. Yes, the first one said in response. It's vanished from our spaceship overnight. We'd come down to collect it from the Easter Bunny. Winnie started yapping at the mention of the Easter Bunny. Dottie put a hand on Winnie's head. The two hadn't got on for years since the Easter Bunny gave her an egg which upset her stomach. We need it for our world. The second one carried on. Our society needs it for Candiness. Candiness? Dottie nodded. She knew of Candiness, the big celebration which the Martians celebrated every year at the same time as Earth did for Easter. A spaceship was hiding on an invisible force field in the back garden, shimmering slightly as she approached it, and she stood there outside. She had met winged women of Venus before, not Martians. She had never seen such technology before when she stepped inside, but also such chaos. It was right here, the taller Martian gestured towards an empty petrol near the control panel. We went outside to untie the flippers for launch. When we came back, as you Erlings called it, it vanished. With Winnie and her arms shaking, Dottie started looking around slowly. Where do you normally store items like this? The intergalactic acquisition section of the shores of Martian point towards a row of grey tins, filed alphabetically by a planet of origin. Dottie didn't look and watched it. Winnie started sniffing in the air. Would this be under E for Earth? The first of the Martians nodded. Perhaps T. T, she carried on. T for terror. Winnie started yapping softly. What's that? She listened as Winnie let her go. She sniffed on the floor and stopped at a jar in E&T, which said holiday. The Martians all looked at her, puzzled. What about this one? She carried on with Winnie, not leaving aside and tapped the lid. The 2 Martians looked at each other, both with antennae twitching, slowly, clearly talking for a language neither Dottie or Winnie knew. Zorpo must have filed it. the first one said, to which the mention of its name, a tall, gangly, younger one arrived. He classifies things by purpose. Zorpo, Dottie surprised her by showing him the jar. Did you file? Zorpo blushed and looked downwards, and she passed the first Martian, who yelped and delighted. Dottie looked at Winnie, who lifted her paws up so Dottie could see what was inside the jar. Thank you, Dottie Huswick, said the short one, and then Winnie, and Winnie, of course. Winnie started yapping again at the sheer mention of her name. You have saved Candinus. Just a simple filing error. Dottie smiled modestly. Happens to the best of us, no matter where we live. They were gone in 10 minutes, and Winnie was back there finishing off her Easter egg. Dottie just watched him take off spellbound at what had happened. Another case closed, she logged in a journal. One that was truly out of this world. That's me done, folks. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed tonight. Thank you again. And thank you again for Amanda for putting up my random nonsense over the years. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you, my friend. Wow. Went by so fast. There's so much that you covered there. And I love the surreal stuff too, like the cosmic Easter egg hunt. That's quite something. Um, and this speaker that says, "I know where and when exactly I die," and like you're the reader's instantly fascinated, like by this perspective, this voice, and then, as if it's an abnormal event, saying, "I was born." It's like there's a mystery around that. Um, and then these descriptions, like sat there feeling like a spare part. Oh my. All right, so let's all unmute our mics and clap or comment and give some praise to
Please don't
Andy.
boo me.
Give some
Thanks, everybody,
praise to
again.
Andy.
Bravo, Andy. Bravo. That was great. What a good set.
Oh, it was awesome. Just
Yeah.
so much in it. So dense and so diverse and awesome. Rock on.
And as usual, your delivery is amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's the ex-actor of me, unfortunately. I used to do acting when I was younger, so appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, Andy, you have a foot in both worlds. You're not confined by Mother Earth.
Hey,
I get a chance.
Thank you.
wait, let me mute.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, I agree. That whole narrator oration, kind of like professional voice, like you could be on the radio or on a TV series or something. Wonderful. Anyone else want to comment?
Wonderful, Andy, up to your normal standards of superlative, brother. Bravo.
Appreciate it, Rick. Thank you again, mate. As always, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, just going to ask you where you get your off the ideas. And I saw the idea of a private detective investigating missing Easter eggs.
Oh, that one's well. I've got a young friend and mentoring at the moment, and she's had a bit of a rough ride at the minute. So I wrote that just to cheer her up because it's just been because she's actually a therapist, and I told her I came up in a conversation. I said to her, "You need to actually write. I'll write you a story. Why did you become a private detective?" I said, I'm not doing private detectives, but you would be if it's chocolate. So that's where it came from, an Easter egg detective story.
Wow.
I wrote it over Easter just as a facetious bit of fun, but it's good to be silly sometimes.
Andy,
I want to know who stole the Toblerone. That's what.
Andy, could you put a link to some of your books in the
Yeah,
in the
I'm going to in a minute. You're right.
Absolutely.
Mate. Yeah, I've got all saved. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, mate.
All right. Thanks so much. I'm going to stop the recording.